Keanu Reeves stepped out of his car, the Los Angeles sun casting a warm glow over the bustling streets of Beverly Hills. He wasn't in a hurry. Keanu never seemed to be in a rush. Dressed casually in faded blue jeans, a well-worn leather jacket, and a pair of sunglasses perched on his nose, he looked like any other person walking down the street. His hair was a little messy, not because he didn't care about his appearance, but because he'd been busy filming scenes for an upcoming project all day. A haircut felt like just the thing to help him unwind. The salon he chose wasn't random. It was one of those high-end places known for catering to celebrities and socialites. It had a sleek glass facade, polished marble floors, and shelves lined with expensive hair products that most people couldn't even pronounce. Keanu figured it would be a good spot to blend in. After all, he wasn't there to draw attention to himself. He just wanted a trim. Little did he know, his decision to walk into this particular salon would turn into an experience he'd remember for quite some time. As soon as Keanu pushed open the heavy glass door, a soft chime announced his arrival. The interior was bright and modern, with oversized mirrors framed in gold, plush velvet chairs, and the faint scent of lavender hanging in the air. It was the kind of place where you could almost hear the sound of money being spent. But despite its luxurious vibe, the atmosphere inside felt oddly cold. Employees moved around briskly, speaking in hushed tones or laughing loudly among themselves, seemingly too preoccupied to notice the new arrival standing near the entrance. Behind the front desk sat a young receptionist, her perfectly manicured, nails tapping rhythmically against her phone screen. She barely glanced up when Keanu approached, her focus glued to whatever drama was unfolding on her social media feed. "Hi," Keanu said politely, his voice calm and friendly. "I was wondering if I could get a haircut today?" The receptionist finally looked up, though only briefly. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, taking in his casual attire and disheveled hair. Without missing a beat, she replied flatly, "Do you have an appointment?" Her tone carried a hint of impatience, as though she already knew the answer and wasn't thrilled about dealing with yet another walk-in customer. Keanu shook his head, still smiling faintly. "No, I don't. But I can wait if there's availability later." At this point, the receptionist sighed audibly, leaning back in her chair as though she were being asked to perform some monumental task. "We're really booked solid today," she said, her words dripping with exaggeration. "You might have to wait hours before anyone can see you." She paused, then added under her breath, "And honestly, we usually book clients weeks in advance." Keanu didn't argue. Instead, he nodded understandingly, saying, "That's okay. I don't mind waiting." If the receptionist found his response surprising, she didn't show it. Most people who walked into this salon either demanded immediate service or stormed off in frustration after hearing they couldn't be squeezed in right away. But Keanu wasn't most people. He simply thanked her and took a seat in the waiting area, settling into one of the overstuffed armchairs without complaint. While he waited, Keanu observed the scene around him. Stylists buzzed between stations, chatting animatedly about their latest celebrity clients or gossiping about industry events. Some laughed loudly, tossing their hair over their shoulders as they recounted stories of red carpet makeovers and exclusive parties. Others scrolled through their phones, occasionally showing off photos of glamorous hairstyles they'd created for A-listers. Every conversation seemed designed to remind everyone within earshot just how important and prestigious this salon was. One stylist, a tall woman with platinum blonde hair and an air of superiority, caught sight of Keanu sitting quietly in the corner. Turning to her colleague, she whispered loudly enough for him to hear, "Who is that guy? He looks completely out of place here." Her friend giggled, glancing over at Keanu with thinly veiled disdain. "Maybe he got lost looking for supercuts," she joked, causing both women to erupt into laughter. Keanu pretended not to notice. He kept his gaze fixed on a magazine he'd picked up from the coffee table, flipping through its glossy pages absent-mindedly. Inside, he remained composed, accustomed to moments like these. Fame had taught him that people often made assumptions based on appearances, and he rarely let it bother him. Still, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of amusement at how oblivious they were to his identity. If only they knew. Time ticked by slowly. Other customers came and went, each greeted with far more enthusiasm than Keanu had received. One woman, dressed in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry, breezed past him with barely a glance, immediately ushering to a private styling suite. Another man, sporting a tailored suit and shiny dress shoes, was offered complimentary champagne, while he waited. Meanwhile, Keanu continued to sit patiently in his chair, unnoticed and unacknowledged. Eventually, a junior stylist, a nervous-looking girl with curly brown hair tied back in a loose bun, approached him hesitantly. She looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, her shoulders tense as she cleared her throat to get his attention. Hi, she stammered. Are you still waiting for a haircut? Keanu smiled warmly, putting her at ease. Yes, I am. Thank you. She hesitated for a moment, glancing around as if seeking approval from someone else before continuing. Okay, follow me, she muttered, leading him to an empty station at the far end of the salon. As they walked, Keanu noticed the whispers growing louder behind him. Someone muttered something about how he didn't look like he belonged in such an upscale establishment. Another stylist rolled their eyes dramatically, mouthing the word tourist to her co-worker. Despite the subtle jabs, Keanu remained unfazed. He'd faced worse reactions during his lifetime, and he understood that people often underestimated him because of his down-to-earth demeanor. To him, none of it mattered. All he cared about was getting a decent haircut, and maybe proving, once again, that kindness could go a long way in situations like these. Little did anyone in the salon realize, however, that their dismissive behavior was about to lead to a moment of sheer astonishment, one that would leave them scrambling to make amends in ways they never expected. The junior stylist, whose name tag read Lila, led Keanu to a station tucked away in the corner of the salon. It was one of the less glamorous spots, far from the main action where the more experienced stylists worked their magic on high-profile clients. Lila seemed visibly uncomfortable as she motioned for him to sit down, her movements stiff and awkward. She adjusted the cape around his neck without making eye contact, her hands trembling slightly as she fumbled with the clasp. So, Lila began hesitantly, trying to break the silence. What are we doing today? Her tone was polite but lacked warmth, as though she were reciting lines from a script rather than engaging in genuine conversation. Keanu leaned back in the chair, his posture relaxed despite the chilly reception. Just a trim, please, he replied kindly. Maybe clean it up a bit. Lila nodded quickly, grabbing a pair of scissors from the counter. As she started snipping at his hair, her lack of enthusiasm became even more apparent. She worked mechanically, her focus seemingly elsewhere. Occasionally, she glanced over her shoulder toward the other stations, where her colleagues were busy, tending to clients who appeared far more glamorous, or at least wealthier, than Keanu. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone, including Keanu himself. Meanwhile, the rest of the salon continued its usual hum of activity, though Keanu remained an afterthought. A group of stylists huddled near the reception desk, gossiping loudly about their weekend plans and celebrity sightings. One of them, a flamboyant man with bleached blonde hair and designer glasses, pointedly looked in Keanu's direction before turning to his friends. Honestly, I don't know why some people think they can just waltz into a place like this without an appointment, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. They have no idea what kind of clientele we deal with here. His comment elicited giggles from the others, none of whom bothered to lower their voices. Another stylist chimed in, flipping her long ponytail over her shoulder dramatically. I mean, look at him. He looks like he hasn't had a proper haircut in years. What is he even doing here? Keanu didn't react outwardly, though he couldn't help but find their remarks amusing. Over the years, he'd grown accustomed to being underestimated because of his unassuming appearance. While many celebrities flaunted their wealth and status, Keanu preferred to blend in, often going unnoticed in public spaces. This wasn't the first time someone had mistaken him for an ordinary guy, nor would it be the last. But there was something uniquely ironic about sitting in a luxury salon, a place synonymous with vanity and exclusivity, and being treated as though he didn't belong. Lila, meanwhile, tried to engage him in small talk, perhaps sensing that ignoring him entirely might come across as rude. "So, do you live around here?" she asked, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. Keanu shook his head slightly, careful not to disrupt her work. "No, I'm just visiting for a bit," he replied. "But I've always liked Beverly Hills. It's nice." "Oh, cool," Lila said, clearly struggling to maintain the conversation. After a brief pause, she ventured another question. "Do you work nearby, or are you, like, in entertainment or something?" Her phrasing made it sound almost like a joke, as if she assumed the answer would be anything but. Keanu smiled faintly, unfazed by her skepticism. "Yeah, I'm an actor," he said simply, his tone neutral. Lila froze momentarily, her scissors hovering mid-air. For a split second, she seemed unsure whether to believe him. Then, recovering her composure, she gave a half-hearted laugh. "Oh, wow, that's awesome. Have I seen you in anything?" Keanu hesitated, debating how much detail to share. He knew mentioning his iconic roles could change the dynamic instantly, but he also didn't want to make things awkward. "Maybe," he said finally, keeping his response vague. "I've done a few movies." At that moment, another client, a woman draped in designer clothing and dripping with diamonds, overheard their exchange. She had been sitting nearby, scrolling through her phone while waiting for her color treatment to set. Curious, she glanced up at Keanu, studying his face intently. Recognition dawned slowly, her eyes widening as she pieced together his features. "Wait a second," she murmured, her voice rising with disbelief. "Are you the Keanu Reeves?" The room fell silent. Every head turned simultaneously, all eyes now fixed on Keanu. Even Lila stopped cutting mid-snip, her mouth hanging open in shock. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The only sound came from the soft hum of blow-dryers and the distant clatter of styling tools. Then, chaos erupted. "Oh my God," the woman exclaimed, nearly jumping out of her chair. "It is you. You're Keanu Reeves." Her outburst sent ripples of excitement and panic through the salon. Stylists abandoned their stations mid-haircut, rushing over to confirm what they were hearing. Clients craned their necks to get a better look, whispering frantically among themselves. Someone dropped a bottle of shampoo, the loud crash echoing through the room as everyone scrambled to process the revelation. One of the senior stylists, a tall woman named Vanessa who prided herself on her ability to spot celebrities, pushed her way to the front of the growing crowd. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and horror. "Are you really Keanu Reeves?" Keanu, ever composed, offered a small smile. "Yes, I am," he said quietly, his tone carrying none of the bravado most stars would have employed in such a situation. If anything, he seemed almost apologetic for causing a stir. Vanessa gasped audibly, clutching her chest as though she might faint. "Oh my goodness, I can't believe we didn't recognize you." She turned to glare at Lila, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "You've been working on Keanu Reeves this whole time?" Lila stammered, her face turning beet red. I didn't know. I swear I had no idea." By now, the entire salon was in a frenzy. Employees who had previously dismissed Keanu as an inconsequential walk-in were tripping over themselves to apologize. The same receptionist who had rolled her eyes at him earlier rushed over, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Mr. Reeves, I am so sorry," she gushed, bowing her head repeatedly as if seeking forgiveness. "I had no clue it was you when you walked in. Please forgive me." Keanu raised a hand, signaling for her to stop. "It's okay," he said gently. "Really, it's fine." But the staff refused to let it go. They bombarded him with apologies, each one more exaggerated than the last. Someone brought him a glass of sparkling water, while another offered him a plate of gourmet chocolates. The owner of the salon emerged from his office, flustered and sweating, insisting that Keanu's service would be completely free. "Anything. You need Mr. Reeves anything at all," he declared, practically begging for redemption. Through it all, Keanu remained remarkably calm. He accepted their apologies graciously, never once letting his demeanor shift from polite and understanding. To him, this kind of reaction wasn't unusual. He'd encountered similar situations countless times before. Fame, he often said, came with its own set of challenges, and he preferred to handle them with humility rather than ego. Still, the irony of the moment wasn't lost on anyone. Here was Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, known for his kindness and humility, being treated poorly simply because he hadn't arrived with fanfare or flashy displays of wealth. And now, faced with the realization of who he truly was, the very people who had dismissed him were scrambling to make amends, their earlier arrogance replaced with groveling desperation. As the commotion continued, Keanu couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of it all. In a world obsessed with appearances, he'd always chosen to prioritize substance over style. Yet here he was, proving once again that sometimes the most extraordinary individuals are those who choose to remain unassuming. The salon erupted into a whirlwind of activity as the staff scrambled to recover from their earlier misjudgment. The owner, a sharply dressed man named Greg, hovered anxiously near Keanu's chair, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Mr. Reeves, I cannot express how sorry we are for the way you were treated," he stammered, wringing his hands nervously. "This is not who we are as a business. We pride ourselves on exceptional service, and clearly we failed you today." Keanu tilted his head slightly, offering a reassuring smile that only seemed to deepen Greg's discomfort. "It's really okay," he said softly, his voice calm and measured. "These things happen." Greg shook his head vehemently, unwilling to let the matter rest. No, it's not okay. You deserve better than this. Please allow us to make it up to you." Before Keanu could respond, Greg turned to the staff and barked orders. "Someone get Mr. Reeves a fresh towel, and bring him a cappuccino. No, wait, does he drink coffee, maybe tea or sparkling water? Someone figure out what he likes." The employees scurried around like ants, bumping into each other in their haste to fulfill Greg's commands. One stylist sprinted to the back room to grab a designer robe, insisting it was far superior to the standard black cape draped over Keanu's shoulders. Another rushed to the reception desk to prepare a gift basket filled with luxury hair care products, complete with a handwritten note apologizing profusely for the oversight. Meanwhile, Lila, the junior stylist who had been cutting his hair, stood, frozen in place, her scissors dangling limply from her fingers. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't mean to treat you badly, I didn't know who you were." Keanu glanced at her, his expression softening. "Hey, don't worry about it," he said kindly. "You were doing your job, no harm done." But Lila couldn't shake the weight of her mistake. She had spent the past 20 minutes ignoring him, treating him like an inconvenience rather than a person. Now, faced with the reality of who he was, she felt utterly mortified. Her colleagues weren't much better off. The same group of stylists who had mocked Keanu moments earlier now crowded around him, gushing about how much they loved his movies. "The Matrix changed my life," one of them declared, clutching her chest dramatically. "I must have watched it 100 times. Another chimed in. "And John Wick? Oh my God, you're a legend. That movie is pure perfection." Their enthusiasm bordered on frantic, as if they were trying to erase their earlier rudeness by showering him with compliments. Keanu listened patiently, nodding occasionally, but never feeding into their frenzy. He understood human nature well enough to know that people often acted differently when confronted with fame. Some became overly eager to impress, while others retreated into awkward silence. In this case, the salon staff fell squarely into the former category. Amid the chaos, Vanessa, the senior stylist who had initially dismissed Keanu, pushed her way through the crowd, determined to redeem herself. "Mr. Reeves, please let me take over your haircut," she pleaded, her tone dripping with desperation. "I promise you'll leave here looking absolutely flawless." Keanu raised an eyebrow, glancing at Lila, who looked like she might burst into tears at any moment. "Actually, Lila's doing a great job," he said firmly, his words carrying a quiet authority. "She doesn't need to stop." Vanessa froze, her confidence faltering under his steady gaze. Are you sure?" she asked hesitantly. Positive, Keanu replied, turning his attention back to Lila. Keep going. You're doing fine. For the first time since the revelation, Lila managed a small, grateful smile. Encouraged by Keanu's reassurance, she picked up her scissors and resumed cutting his hair, her movement steadier now that the initial shock had worn off. The other stylists lingered nearby, watching intently as though witnessing a rare and sacred ritual. Even Greg hovered close, periodically checking in to ensure Keanu was comfortable. As the haircut progressed, the mood in the salon shifted subtly. What had started as a frenzied attempt to grovel transformed into genuine admiration. Several employees began sharing stories of encounters they'd had with celebrities, each anecdote punctuated by nervous laughter and self-deprecating remarks. One stylist recounted the time she accidentally spilled dye on a famous pop star's dress, while another admitted to once mistaking a billionaire tech mogul for a delivery driver. Through it all, Keanu listened attentively, offering words of encouragement or sharing his own experiences of being underestimated. "You'd be surprised how often people don't recognize me," he said with a shrug. "Sometimes it's refreshing. It reminds me that fame isn't everything." His humility struck a chord with everyone present. Here was a man who could easily demand special treatment, yet he chose instead to downplay his status, focusing on kindness and understanding. For many of the stylists, it was a humbling reminder of the importance of treating every customer with respect, regardless of outward appearances. By the time Lila finished trimming Keanu's hair, the atmosphere in the salon had transformed entirely. Gone was the air of arrogance and exclusivity. In its place was a sense of warmth and camaraderie. The staff gathered around to admire Lila's handiwork, genuinely impressed by how well she had executed the cut despite the pressure. Even Vanessa, who had initially tried to take over, offered heartfelt praise. "Wow, Lila, this looks amazing," she said sincerely. "You did an incredible job." Lila beamed, her earlier anxiety replaced by pride. "Thank you," she murmured, casting a grateful glance at Keanu. "I couldn't have done it without him being so patient." Keanu stood up, removing the cape and folding it neatly before handing it back to Lila. "Thanks for taking care of me," he said warmly. "I appreciate it." Before anyone could stop him, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a generous tip, pressing it into Lila's palm. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she realized the amount far exceeded what most clients left, even the wealthy ones. "This is too much," she protested weakly, though her trembling hands betrayed her gratitude. "It's exactly right," Keanu countered with a smile. Then, turning to the rest of the staff, he added, "Thank you all for making this visit memorable. I hope we can laugh about it someday." With that, he slipped on his sunglasses and headed toward the door. As he stepped outside, the employees stood frozen, watching in awe as the Hollywood legend disappeared into the bustling streets of Beverly Hills. For a long moment, no one spoke. The salon, which had been buzzing with energy just moments ago, fell eerily silent. Finally, Greg broke the spell, exhaling deeply as he sank into a nearby chair. "Well," he muttered, rubbing his temples, "that was something." The others nodded in agreement, still processing what had just happened. It wasn't every day that a global superstar walked into their salon, and even less common for them to handle the situation with such grace and humility. As the initial shock wore off, a new realization began to sink in. Keanu Reeves hadn't come to their salon seeking attention or special treatment. He had simply wanted a haircut. And in return, he had given them a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. One about judgment, kindness, and the value of seeing beyond surface-level impressions. From that day forward, the salon operated with a renewed sense of purpose. Clients, whether dressed in designer suits or casual jeans, were greeted with genuine warmth and professionalism. Employees reminded themselves daily of the man who had taught them that true character couldn't be measured by appearances alone. And though none of them would ever forget the day Keanu Reeves walked through their doors, they knew the real takeaway wasn't about celebrity. It was about humanity. As Keanu stepped out of the salon, the staff inside was left in a state of stunned reflection. The door had barely closed behind him when the reality of what had just happened began to sink in fully. Greg, the owner, stood near the entrance with his arms crossed, staring at the spot where Keanu had been moments ago. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly as he replayed the events in his mind. "I can't believe we treated him like that," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "What must he think of us now?" The other employees echoed his sentiments, their earlier excitement giving way to a mix of guilt and self-recrimination. Vanessa, the senior stylist who had dismissed Keanu so casually, paced back and forth, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "I feel like such an idiot," she admitted, running a hand through her perfectly styled hair. "We acted like snobs. How could we not see who he was?" Lila, still holding the folded cape Keanu had handed her, sat quietly at her station, her emotions swirling between gratitude and shame. She clutched the generous tip he'd given her tightly in one hand, feeling its weight both literally and figuratively. "He didn't have to be so nice about it," she whispered to herself. "After everything we did or didn't do, he could have walked out angry or embarrassed us further. But he didn't. He was kind." Her words caught the attention of another stylist nearby, who nodded solemnly. "That's just who he is," she said softly. "Have you ever heard anyone say a bad thing about Keanu Reeves? The guy's practically a saint." The comment sparked a conversation among the staff, each person sharing stories they'd read or heard about Keanu's humility and generosity. One mentioned how he once bought motorcycles for the stunt team on the set of John Wick, as a thank you gesture. Another recalled hearing about how he donated millions to cancer research after losing loved ones to the disease. Someone else brought up the countless times fans had posted videos online of him stopping to chat with strangers or helping people in need without expecting anything in return. "He's not just a good actor," Greg said finally, breaking the silence. "He's a genuinely good person, and we completely missed it because we judged him based on how he looked." The room fell quiet again, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. For a luxury salon that prided itself on catering to elite clientele, this incident served as a harsh wake-up call. They realized that in their pursuit of prestige and exclusivity, they had lost sight of something far more important: treating everyone with dignity and respect. Greg decided then and there that things needed to change. He called an impromptu meeting, gathering all the staff into the center of the salon. The atmosphere was tense but focused, everyone aware that this moment carried significance beyond a single embarrassing encounter. "Listen," Greg began, his voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. "What happened today was unacceptable, not because Keanu Reeves is famous, but because we failed to treat him, and by extension, anyone else who walks through our doors, with the, basic courtesy every human being deserves." His words resonated deeply with the team. Lila wiped away a tear, feeling both relieved and determined. "I should have known better," she said quietly, addressing the group. "Even if I didn't recognize him, I shouldn't have treated him like he didn't matter. It's my job to make sure every client feels welcome, no matter what they're wearing or how they look." Vanessa chimed in next, her usual confidence replaced with vulnerability. "And I'm guilty too," she admitted. "I mocked him right, in front of everyone. If I hadn't been so quick to judge, maybe we wouldn't have made fools of ourselves. We need to remember that appearances don't define someone's worth." The discussion continued, each employee taking turns to reflect on their behavior and share ideas for how to improve moving forward. By the end of the meeting, they had drafted a list of resolutions aimed at fostering a more inclusive and respectful environment. Among them were simple yet powerful commitments: greeting every client warmly regardless of their appearance, offering personalized attention to walk-ins instead of dismissing them outright, and reminding themselves daily that every person has value, even if they aren't dripping in designer labels or driving luxury cars. To reinforce these changes, Greg announced that he would implement mandatory training sessions focused on customer service and empathy. He also proposed creating a kindness wall near the reception area, where clients could leave notes sharing positive experiences or compliments about the staff. "Let's use this as an opportunity to grow," he concluded, "not just as professionals but as human beings." Over the next few days, the salon transformed. Employees greeted each new client with genuine enthusiasm, asking thoughtful questions and going out of their way to ensure comfort. Even the receptionist, who had initially rolled her eyes at Keanu, adopted a friendlier demeanor, making a conscious effort to smile and engage with everyone who entered. The shift wasn't drastic. It wasn't about pretending to be perfect, but rather about embracing imperfection with humility and learning from mistakes. Meanwhile, word of Keanu's visit began to spread outside the salon. A few customers who had witnessed the aftermath took to social media, posting detailed accounts of what had happened. Their posts quickly gained traction, with thousands of likes and shares flooding in within hours. Fans of Keanu praised his grace under pressure, while others commended the salon for owning up to their missteps and vowing to improve. One post, written by the woman who had recognized Keanu during his haircut, went viral. "Today I saw firsthand why Keanu Reeves is loved by so many," she wrote. Despite being humiliated at a high-end salon, he handled the situation with kindness and patience. Instead of lashing out or demanding apologies, he reminded everyone present that we're all human. This man is truly one of a kind. The comment section exploded with responses, ranging from heartfelt tributes to personal anecdotes of encountering Keanu in everyday settings. Many readers shared similar stories of being underestimated or overlooked due to their appearance, expressing solidarity with the lesson the salon staff had learned. Others applauded the business for using the experience as a catalyst for growth, urging other companies to follow suit. Back at the salon, the staff monitored the online buzz with a mixture of pride and apprehension. While they appreciated the support and encouragement from Keanu's fans, they also understood that actions spoke louder than words. True change wouldn't come from promises alone. It required consistent effort and accountability. In the weeks that followed, the salon became a case study in redemption. Local news outlets picked up the story, interviewing Greg and some of the employees about their journey toward improvement. When asked what advice they would give to others facing similar situations, Greg summed it up succinctly. "Mistakes happen, but it's how you respond that defines you. Don't let embarrassment stop you from doing better. Learn, adapt, and above all, treat people with respect. Because you never know who might be sitting in your chair." For Lila, the experience proved transformative. Once hesitant and unsure of herself, she blossomed into a confident and compassionate stylist, earning praise from clients for her attentiveness and skill. Her colleagues often teased her about having cut the most famous hair in Hollywood, but she took it in stride, using the memory as motivation to always give her best effort. As for Keanu, he remained blissfully unaware of the impact his visit had made. To him, it was just another day, a fleeting moment in a life filled with interactions both big and small. Yet those who had crossed paths with him that afternoon would carry the lessons they learned forever, reminded daily of the power of humility and the importance of seeing beyond surface-level judgments. Though the salon would never forget the day Keanu Reeves walked through their doors, they knew the real takeaway wasn't about celebrity. It was about humanity. And in embracing that truth, they found a renewed sense of purpose, proving that even the most unexpected encounters could lead to meaningful growth. In the weeks following Keanu Reeves's unexpected visit, the salon became a hub of transformation, not just in its operations, but also in the mindset of its staff. The lessons learned from that fateful day were etched into their collective memory, shaping how they interacted with each other and their clients. It wasn't an overnight change. It required conscious effort, reflection, and accountability. But as the days turned into weeks, the impact of Keanu's quiet dignity began to ripple through every corner of the business. Greg, the owner, took charge of implementing the resolutions they had agreed upon during their post-incident meeting. He started by organizing weekly training sessions focused on customer service, empathy, and inclusivity. These weren't your typical corporate seminars filled with dry presentations and bullet points. Instead, Greg invited guest speakers, psychologists, communication experts, and even former clients to share real-world insights about the importance of treating everyone with respect. One session featured a motivational speaker who emphasized the idea that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. The message struck a chord with the staff, reminding them that kindness could make all the difference in someone's day. The kindness wall idea quickly gained traction, becoming one of the most talked about features of the salon. Positioned near the reception desk, the wall was adorned with colorful sticky notes and Polaroid photos left behind by satisfied clients. Some notes expressed gratitude for small gestures, a stylist taking extra time to explain hair care tips or offering a warm smile after a long day. Others shared heartfelt stories of feeling seen and valued when they least expected it. One note read, "Thank you for making me feel beautiful on a day I didn't think I was." Another simply said, "You changed my mood and my life." What surprised the staff most was how much these messages meant to them. Reading the notes reminded them why they had chosen this line of work in the first place: to make people feel good about themselves. Lila, in particular, found herself drawn to the wall whenever she needed a boost of confidence. Seeing tangible proof of her impact helped her shed the lingering guilt over her initial treatment of Keanu. She realized that while mistakes were inevitable, growth came from learning and improving. Vanessa, once the epitome of salon arrogance, underwent perhaps the most dramatic shift. After publicly acknowledging her role in mocking Keanu, she made a personal commitment to lead by example. She began mentoring junior stylists like Lila, teaching them not only technical skills but also the art of connecting with clients on a deeper level. During one mentoring session, she told Lila, "It's easy to get caught up in the glitz and glamour of this industry, but at the end of the day, we're here to serve people, not judge them. That's what makes us professionals." Her words resonated deeply with the team, fostering a culture of mutual support and collaboration. Gone were the days of cliques and whispered gossip. In their place emerged a sense of camaraderie, where employees celebrated each other's successes and lifted one another up during tough times. Even the receptionist, whose earlier dismissiveness had sparked the chain of events, became a beacon of warmth and efficiency. Clients now remarked on how pleasant it was to be greeted by her genuine smile and cheerful demeanor. Beyond the walls of the salon, the story continued to inspire others. Local media coverage brought waves of curiosity seekers eager to experience the Keanu effect for themselves. Some came hoping to catch a glimpse of celebrity magic, while others arrived curious about the salon's newfound reputation for kindness. Regardless of their reasons, nearly everyone left impressed, not because of luxurious treatments or high-end products, but because of the genuine care they received. One such visitor was an elderly woman named Margaret, who walked into the salon one rainy afternoon clutching a faded umbrella and wearing clothes that looked decades out of style. At first glance, she seemed out of place among the chic clientele. But instead of turning her away or rushing her along, the receptionist greeted her warmly and offered her a seat. When asked if she had an appointment, Margaret admitted she didn't, but explained that her late husband used to bring her to salons like this for special occasions. Now widowed and living on a fixed income, she rarely indulged in such luxuries, but today felt different. Touched by her story, Greg decided to offer Margaret complimentary services. He personally assigned Vanessa to style her hair, instructing her to go above and beyond. As Margaret sat in the chair, tears welled up in her eyes as she recounted memories of her husband and the joy he brought into her life. By the time Vanessa finished, Margaret looked radiant, not just because of the elegant updo, but because she felt truly seen and cherished. When the salon posted about Margaret's visit on social media, the response was overwhelming. Thousands of people praised the staff for prioritizing compassion over profit, proving that acts of kindness could resonate far beyond individual interactions. Inspired by the feedback, Greg announced a monthly initiative called Pay It Forward Fridays, where the salon would provide free services to individuals facing financial hardship or undergoing difficult circumstances. The program quickly gained popularity, drawing attention from local charities and community organizations eager to partner with them. Amid these changes, the staff often reflected on Keanu's role in sparking their transformation. Though none of them had spoken to him since his visit, they felt a deep sense of gratitude toward him. His humility and grace under pressure had taught them invaluable lessons about judgment, empathy, and the power of leading by example. They began referring to him affectionately as our accidental mentor, a title that perfectly captured the unintended yet profound influence he'd had on their lives. To honor his impact, the Salon created a permanent tribute in the form of a framed quote displayed prominently near the entrance. The quote, attributed to Keanu himself, read, "Try to be kinder than necessary." Beneath it was a small plaque explaining its significance. This salon owes its renewed spirit to the wisdom and humility of Keanu Reeves, who reminded us that true beauty lies not in appearances, but in how we treat one another. As time passed, the salon evolved into more than just a place for haircuts and styling. It became a sanctuary of positivity and connection. Employees no longer viewed their jobs as mere transactions. They saw themselves as ambassadors of kindness, spreading goodwill one client at a time. Their efforts paid off in ways they never anticipated. Business boomed, not because of flashy marketing campaigns, but because word-of-mouth praise attracted loyal customers who valued authenticity over pretense. Looking back, the staff couldn't help but marvel at how drastically their perspective had shifted. What had started as a humiliating misstep had blossomed into an opportunity for growth and redemption. They had learned that mistakes, no matter how embarrassing, could be turned into stepping stones toward something greater. And though Keanu Reeves had long since moved on to his next project or adventure, his presence lingered in the hearts and minds of everyone at the salon, a reminder that even the smallest moments of grace could leave an indelible mark. By embracing the lessons of that unforgettable day, the salon proved that true success wasn't measured by fame or fortune, but by the ability to touch lives in meaningful ways. And as they welcomed each new client through their doors, they carried with them the knowledge that every person deserved to be treated with dignity, respect, and kindness, because you never knew who might walk in next. Months had passed since Keanu Reeves's quiet yet transformative visit to the luxury salon, and the changes he had inspired continued to take root in remarkable ways. The staff, once consumed by their pursuit of glamour and exclusivity, now approached their work with a renewed sense of purpose. Every client who walked through the doors was greeted not as a transaction, but as an individual deserving of care and respect. The salon's reputation for kindness spread far beyond Beverly Hills, drawing visitors from all walks of life who sought not just a haircut, but an experience rooted in genuine connection. One crisp autumn morning, Greg arrived at the salon earlier than usual, his mind buzzing with ideas for future initiatives. As he unlocked the door and stepped inside, he noticed something unusual, a small envelope tucked beneath the glass entrance sign. Curious, he picked it up and examined it closely. There was no return address, only his name scrawled neatly across the front in black ink. Opening it carefully, he pulled out a handwritten note on plain white paper. "Dear Greg and the team, I wanted to thank you for reminding me why I love what I do. Your salon isn't just about hair, it's about making people feel valued. That's rare these days, and it means more than you know. Keep spreading kindness. The world needs more of it. Warm regards, Keanu." Greg's hands trembled slightly as he read the words over and over again. For weeks, he and his staff had wondered if Keanu even remembered their little corner of the world. Yet here was proof that he not only remembered but had been touched by their efforts to improve. Greg felt a lump rise in his throat as he realized how much this simple gesture meant, not just to him, but to everyone at the salon. Without hesitation, Greg called the staff together, gathering them in the center of the room. When they saw the note, their faces lit up with disbelief and joy. Lila clutched her chest, tears welling up in her eyes. "He actually thought about us," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "After everything that happened, he still cared enough to write this." Vanessa nodded, her usual confidence softened by awe. "This is incredible," she said, shaking her head. "He didn't have to do this. But that's who he is. He sees the good in people, even when we don't deserve it." The note quickly became a cherished keepsake, framed and displayed alongside the quote near the entrance. Clients couldn't help but notice the palpable energy in the salon whenever someone mentioned Keanu's name. It wasn't hero worship or celebrity obsession. It was gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons he had taught them, intentionally or not, about humility, empathy, and the power of treating others with dignity. As word of the note spread, so did the salon's influence. Other businesses in the area began reaching out, eager to learn how they too could foster a culture of kindness. Greg welcomed these inquiries with open arms, hosting workshops and sharing insights gleaned from their journey. He often emphasized that transformation didn't require grand gestures. It started with small intentional acts of compassion. "It's not about perfection," he would say during these sessions. "It's about progress. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can." The ripple effect extended beyond professional circles. Regular clients, inspired by the salon's ethos, began incorporating similar practices into their own lives. One woman, a teacher named Sarah, shared how she implemented Kindness Fridays in her classroom, encouraging students to perform random acts of goodwill. Another client, a local business owner, revamped his company's customer service policies to prioritize empathy over efficiency. Even strangers passing by the salon stopped to snap photos of the kindness wall, posting them online with captions like, "Imagine if every place was like this." For the staff, the impact was deeply personal. Lila, once plagued by self-doubt, blossomed into a confident stylist whose warmth and skill earned her a loyal following. Her colleagues often joked that she had become the heart of the salon, always ready with a kind word or thoughtful suggestion. Vanessa, meanwhile, found fulfillment in mentoring others, helping junior stylers navigate challenges both big and small. And the receptionist, whose initial dismissal of Keanu had sparked the entire ordeal, became known as the Welcome Ambassador, her radiant smile setting the tone for every visitor's experience. But perhaps the most profound change occurred within Greg himself. Once driven solely by profit margins and prestige, he now viewed success through a different lens, one focused on impact rather than income. He made it a point to check in with employees regularly, ensuring they felt supported and appreciated. He also introduced flexible scheduling and mental health resources, recognizing that happy employees translated to happy clients. Under his leadership, the salon evolved into a model of ethical entrepreneurship, proving that businesses could thrive while staying true to their values. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and bathed the salon in golden light, Greg stood alone in the empty space, reflecting on how far they'd come. The walls were adorned with reminders of their journey, the kindness wall, the framed quote, and now Keanu's note, all symbols of growth born from humility. He smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of pride not just in what they had achieved, but in the legacy they were building. Suddenly the door chimed softly, breaking the silence. Greg turned to see a familiar figure step inside, Keanu Reeves. Dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket, he looked exactly as he had months ago, though his presence carried an undeniable weight. Greg froze momentarily, unsure whether he was dreaming. "Hi," Keanu said with a warm smile, his voice calm and familiar. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. Hope that's okay." Greg blinked rapidly, struggling to find his words. "Of course it's okay," he finally managed, rushing forward to greet him. "We're honored to have you back." Word spread quickly among the staff, who gathered around in disbelief. Lila nearly dropped her scissors, while Vanessa clasped her hands to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Despite their excitement, they resisted the urge to overwhelm him, remembering the importance of treating him, and everyone else, with grace and respect. "I just wanted to see how things were going," Keanu explained, glancing around the salon. His eyes landed on the kindness wall, where colorful notes and photos formed a vibrant tapestry of gratitude. "Looks like you've been busy." Greg nodded enthusiastically, gesturing toward the wall. "That's all thanks to you," he said, earnestly. "Your visit changed everything for us. We wouldn't be where we are today without the lesson you taught us." Keanu chuckled softly, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "I didn't do anything special," he replied modestly. "You guys did the hard work. All I did was remind you of something you already knew. His humility struck a chord with everyone present. Here was a man whose actions spoke louder than words, whose quiet strength had inspired monumental change. As the staff exchanged glances, they realized that Keanu's return wasn't just a coincidence, it was a testament to the bond they had, unknowingly forged that day. Before leaving, Keanu took a moment to speak privately with each employee, thanking them for their dedication and resilience. To Lila, he offered words of encouragement. "You're doing amazing work. Don't ever forget that." To Vanessa, he expressed admiration for her leadership. Mentoring others is one of the greatest gifts you can give. And to Greg, he left a final piece of advice. Keep going. You're making a difference. As Keanu stepped back onto the bustling streets of Beverly Hills, the staff watched him go with hearts full of gratitude. They knew they might never see him again, but his presence would forever linger in their memories and in the values they lived by every day. In the months and years that followed, the Salon continued to thrive, its mission of kindness inspiring countless others. Clients often remarked that walking through its doors felt like coming home, a sentiment echoed by employees who viewed their workplace as more than just a job. It was a family. And though Keanu Reeves remained a distant figure in Hollywood, his legacy endured in the hearts of those who had learned from him. Through it all, one truth remained clear. Sometimes, the most extraordinary moments stem from the simplest acts of humanity. A haircut, a note, a second chance. Each held the power to transform lives in ways no one could predict. And for the staff of the luxury salon, Keanu's quiet example served as a timeless reminder that true beauty lies not in appearances, but in the connections we forge and the kindness we share.